So good morning, friends, and a very warm welcome to this BRICS Civil Forum, which FIDC is hosting here. We have our delegates here from all the BRICS countries, and I have been attending a couple of BRICS events, and I find that in this event particularly, we have got quite a few number of delegates from the BRICS countries, and I think it's the strength of civil society that we have in such large numbers people from the BRICS countries. It is really heartening to see all of you here. Long distance you have traveled. A very warm welcome to all of you here. CSO community has to contribute, and next 2 days we would be discussing in what all different ways civil society can engage with the BRICS process, and of course here in India with Ministry of External Affairs, FIDC is the instrument which has come up in terms of MEA's own partnership through Development Partnership Administration, but then also through academia and civil society interaction that we could get you here. All of us are here in terms of getting different ideas together. FIDC has also been conducting several regional consultations on India's development cooperation policy in different parts of India. I'm very glad that people have come here from our regional consultations, and I see people who have come from border areas in Rajasthan. A very warm welcome to all of you. Dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, it's also a great pleasure for us to have here with us Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who is known to the civil society with his earlier interaction with the BRICS process. When we were preparing for this, couple of meetings have also been organized to get everyone together on this page. So almost 4 consultations as part of preparation of this have already gone through. Just over the weekend, we had Vani leading it in a major way in terms of their outcome, and we already have the prelude from International BRICS meeting, which was over the last weekend. Quite a few delegates are here from this. Shashi is here. We are also going to circulate that document with us. Dr. Shashi Tharoor is also chairman of the External Affairs Parliamentary Standing Committee. So I think he is well placed in terms of bringing some of these perspectives in the realm of foreign policy evolution process itself. I'm also glad that today Mr. Amar Sinha could also join us. I know how difficult it was for him to come out of the very busy schedule that he has, and as some of you already know, diplomatic activities are on its peak now. We missed our External Affairs Minister today to join us, but I'm very glad that Mr. Amar Sinha could make it. And also with him is Mr. Alok Dimri, who is the Joint Secretary, but a major force behind this whole process of getting more than 100 events together on BRICS, and India has put in a huge energy in the BRICS process. There is also an effort to reach out to the BIMSTEC countries, and today I'm glad that we have here people from Nepal and Bangladesh also with us in terms of our efforts to reach out to some of these countries from BIMSTEC. Civil society has this unique ability to get all these actors together. At FIDC, this effort was largely led by 2 members of our committee, which looks after the external linkages of FIDC. One is Nisha Agarwal, who is here. I'm grateful to her for her support, and also Amitabh Behar, whom we are missing for his some external engagement. We are also very thankful to Vani for their support in getting the exhibition together, as some of you would see it outside. Shashi and Josna both have put in a lot of effort in terms of getting these all the panelists together and also the exhibitors together. We also have the pleasure in terms of welcoming the leaders of the BRICS delegation here, and we would be waiting for our chairman, Mr. Shyam Saran, to introduce them to us. They would be in terms of leading the various organizations that are there in the BRICS countries. In some countries, there are counterpoints for FIDC, but some are in the process of evolving them, and they would be introduced to you by Mr. Shyam Saran. In the introduction, I just have 2 points to make in terms of how the idea of BRICS Civil came up, I must mention that this is the second event in terms of the formal process. The first one was initiated by Russia. Russia gave a big push to the idea, and we have two members on the panel who are leading two different delegations. Malcolm is here and also Victoria. Both would mention, and they were part of the initial process. ORF was also there, so Ambassador Vishwanathan is here. So 3 persons who attended the first BRICS Civil. This is the second one, which is on a very different scale than the one that we had in Russia. And I was trying to collect in terms of how we are going to move forward and concretize this process, consolidate this process. Because largely BRICS stand for this alternate narrative that we see in terms of how the BRICS countries are going to bring in new ideas about the institutions. So we already have the new development bank, but how new is that bank? What new ideas we bring in? What new ideas on development we are bringing in? Some of those issues are extremely important for the BRICS countries to address, and civil society is best placed to bring in some of these ideas on the table. They are also extremely well placed in terms of raising some of the ground realities that are there in terms of their work, and also in terms of connect of their work with the policy formulation process. In this inaugural, we are also very lucky to have the ambassador here from Brazil. A very warm welcome to you, sir. We also have Anuradha Chinoy, the chairperson of the FIDC. I would like to invite her now to add her words of welcome. Thank you.
Honourable Member of Parliament, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Secretary to the MEA, Mr. Amar Sinha, Director General of RIS, Professor Chaturvedi, Honourable Delegate Panellists, delegates from the BRICS countries and others, friends from civil society, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Forum for International Development Cooperation in India, I'm deeply honoured to welcome you to this civil forum before the BRICS Summit. This forum is a part of a process that is trying to build synergy between civil society and the BRICS multilateral dialogue. The BRICS have taken many steps that have made the international community stop, look, and rethink. This is because, 1, the pace of institutionalization of structured financial arrangements like the New Development Bank and other arrangements. 2, because the increase in BRICS development assistance, which is embedded in the experience of the BRICS as former aid recipients, that is reshaping the development assistance architecture. 3, the series of events that take place before the BRICS Forum that are increasing every year under the BRICS presidency. Witness, for example, in India, within a year of over 100 activities ranging from meetings of agricultural ministers of the BRICS, security advisors, to BRICS film festivals, academic fora, and now the BRICS Civil. These activities are taking the BRICS dialogue into the sinews of governance and civil society. This, friends, is not business as usual, but it is a multilateral methodology model that has the capacity to change global governance. There is a narrative that the engagement of BRICS with civil society is uneven and limited, but the BRICS have opened up in their own way to their civil society to discuss different aspects of the BRICS dialogue, especially their development assistance, and even partner with them and get an input into development assistance programs. We in civil society are pushing and hoping this agenda will grow as BRICS does. There are both convergences and divergences in the narratives of the BRICS states and their civil societies. This is natural and the way of civil society. The convergences are that civil society supports BRICS when, 1, they challenge the hegemony of the Bretton Woods institutions and demand a voice for the global South. 2, when they support reforms for a more democratic United Nations and international law-based international relations. 3, when they support loan waivers, give concessional credits, humanitarian assistance development to countries of the South. 4, civil society always supports the increased trade between the BRICS with developing countries when based on mutual benefits. 5, they support the construction of a multipolar system that gives more opportunity to the South and wants equitable relations between the North and the South. 6, they support BRICS when they talk of sustainable goals, development, social security, inclusive growth, pluralism, tolerance, and multiculturalism. Civil society has demands of BRICS, and many of these are actually listed in the program which is going to follow. Just to give a few examples, is of course that civil society wants BRICS to take a lead in ensuring better social policies domestically and internationally. They want people-centric pathways for balanced and inclusive growth, poverty eradication, women's economic empowerment, social liberation, and political participation, controlling illicit financial flows, all issues of environment, health, water, and there's an entire menu which I'm not going to, it's right there in the dialogue which is going to follow. So civil society is making arguments for ending the wide inequality that is engulfing our societies and creating policies that address global warming and climate change. Civil society knows that all sections of society and state need to work collectively for these agendas. Governments should accept civil societies as critical partners whose task it is to provide critical engagement and heed their words. Civil society welcomes the BRICS broadening their agenda. Strong states like those of the BRICS are the leading lights of their continent, and they represent the global South. The BRICS must engage continuously with their civil society because civil society, despite their problems and shortcomings, is a mediation between state power and local and grassroots knowledge and activism. As one of the philosophers of civil society, Gramsci, said that civil society work is of building civic capacities to think differently, challenge assumptions and norms, articulate new ideas and visions. A synergetic relation between BRICS states and their civil society will only further these already emerging middle powers of the world. It will give them greater legitimacy and set the agenda for their leadership as role models. And it is with this in mind that FIDC and the civil society sets its hope on the BRICS meeting. I would like to thank you all for being present. A special thanks to the Ministry of External Affairs that facilitated this process with utmost sophistication, least intervention, and constant support of the process of gathering local, regional, and at national levels of the BRICS societies and in India. Lastly, I believe that the outcome of this conference will have repercussions in global civil society. I therefore join you and give you all the best for rigorous discussions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anu. Now I would request our chairman, Ambassador Shyam Saran, to chair and also make his remarks. As some of you might already be aware, apart from being India's former foreign secretary, one thing that I think all of us must know here in this forum particularly is the unique initiative that he made when he was our envoy in Nepal. And that is the small development project that he launched. And SDPs now have become a flagship program of India's Ministry of External Affairs and their development cooperation program. The uniqueness of this program is to engage with civil society and community. So that way, Ambassador Shyam Saran has the credit to open up India's development cooperation to civil society and to the people of the country with whom we are partnering. And SDP now is being implemented by India in Afghanistan, in Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and several African countries. So, sir, you have the floor now. Sound, please, there.
This one seems to be.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sachin, for those remarks. It is my privilege to chair this inaugural session. Let me join Sachin in extending a very warm welcome to all our delegates to this very important forum which is taking place. BRICS began with basically a understanding amongst the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa, that these were countries which may not be superpowers, but these are countries which have, over the period of time, acquired considerable amount of influence in international affairs. And if they brought their energies together, they could make a difference in terms of shaping the new world order. Shaping a world order which, since the end of the Second World War, had largely remained intact, but especially over the last couple of decades, it has been undergoing a very major change. And what will be the shape of the new international order which is going to be coming into being, whether it is the security architecture, new security architecture, or the new economic architecture? It is very important that countries like the BRICS, which are countries with some degree of influence, if they work together, they could actually make a very big difference. But I think there is also a recognition that governments, of course, play an important role. But unless the actions of the government are also supported by the kind of network which we could establish amongst our peoples, in terms of what we are trying to do through a series of meetings that have been held on the eve of the BRICS summit, whether it is the academic forum or several other technical meetings. This is to create a network of contacts amongst the people from very different sections of society. Because that ultimately would provide the driving force if we want to take this BRICS project forward. Without that kind of a network amongst people, the personal associations which can be established among people in different fields, without that it would be very difficult to really take this project forward. It cannot only be a governmental level enterprise. We realized it ourselves in the limited context of development cooperation, where we found that the government in India could do a much better job if it reached out to our society, who themselves were involved in a large number of activities for social welfare, for economic welfare. And by bringing such organizations, not only in our country, but in other countries together, we could in fact do a much better job in dealing with some of the challenges which we face today globally. So with those opening remarks, let me once again extend a very warm welcome to all our guests. And let me now just introduce you to the main speakers who we have in this morning's session. We have MS Dr. Victoria Panova, who is the Chief Advisor of the National Committee on BRICS Research, and she's also Director of the FU Oriental Institute, School of Regional and International Studies, Russia. We also have Ambassador Siepo Hua, who's member of the Executive Board of the United Nations of China, and he's a former ambassador of China to the Republic of Vanuatu. You are welcome, sir. Reverend Malcolm Damon, who's the Executive Director, Economic Justice Network of FOCCISA, South Africa. And we also have MS Alice de Mores Amorim Bogas, who's Climate Change and Development Associate, GIP. And we have Ambassador, of course, HS Vishwanathan, who's Distinguished Fellow, Observer Research Foundation. It also gives me great pleasure to welcome in our midst Mr. Amar Sinha, Secretary, Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs, who has been a great support for our taking this initiative. And finally, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, we are extremely grateful to you to have found time to be with us this morning at this very important meeting, and to give us your perspective on how this initiative can be taken forward. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to give the inaugural address. So with these words, may I now invite the first speaker to take the floor, Ms. Alicia de Moris Amorim Bogas. You have the floor.
Can you hear? Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thanks you all for coming and for this invitation. In particular, FIDC and RIS for this warm welcome. And I congratulate you all for this endeavor. I'm particularly glad to be here because I see this moment as a step further in terms of institutionalizing this space for BRICS Forum and a space for collaboration and knowledge sharing. That I would love to see this happening more frequently throughout the years, and once, who knows, maybe at the sidelines of the Heads of State Summit. I think this would be a high-hanging fruit that we should all aim to have. I think I acknowledge the whole efforts to make this process really inclusive and diverse. And I think we should have increasingly the commitment of having more social movements, grassroots organizations, and the pluralism that our countries represent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in very unstable and uncertain times. The rights of women, the rights of workers and minorities are so harshly conquered in the past decades, are maybe at stake. In my country, I think we have been putting a lot of energy on South-South cooperation for a while now, and this is no longer taken for granted. And I really welcome this opportunity to be here and see this demand for increasing further this collaboration and maybe avoid that from any backlash on this. I do feel that we need, as civil society representatives, to develop a long-term strategy for our development models and a reasoning for our South-South cooperation standards. I do welcome the centrality of sustainable development in the whole agenda and of this meeting and the whole panels. And I feel that we need to make it more meaningful and concrete to our governments, to our people, and make it more than some fuzzy words. It's in our hands, actually, to give true meaning to that. I think sustainability should be at the core of the discussions of economic growth, of the economic development, and not something that we just put on the sidelines of that. We should definitely, as part of having most of the people in the world, like 40% of the population and many natural resources, develop a wiser approach to the use of this, to the benefit of everyone, to reduce inequalities, and to make to promote well-being to all. This would be crucial to strengthen our democracies, and it's critical to combat the increasing wave of conservatism thinking that has been happening not only in our countries, but elsewhere in the world. I'm really looking forward to the discussions in the next days, to share my ideas, listen and learn a lot with all of you. And thanks again for this invitation.
Thank you very much. You have drawn attention to some very important challenges that all of us confront. One is the issue of resource sustainability, how to ensure that the economic development model that each one of us follows is sustainable in the long run. Secondly, the whole aspect of inclusive growth, that is the kind of inequalities which we see, that is something which is becoming a very major concern and leading to many social, political consequences. And this is something where I think the BRICS countries, which are developing countries, but at the same time have reached a certain level of development, I think they can make a very important contribution. So the discussions that take place amongst representatives of organizations who are really at the ground and who really confront many of these issues on a day-to-day basis, I think this would be a very valuable contribution to the BRICS debate. I now have great pleasure in inviting Dr. Victoria Panova to take the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you. Ambassador, thank you so much. Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Mr. Amar Sinha, Professor Chaturvedi, Professor Chinoy, thank you so much for, I would like to extend my gratitude and express my gratitude for the Indian side to actually take up the initiative initially launched by Russia of incorporating civil society into into a dialogue, into bigger discussions between our governments and between different layers of our societies so that we can come up with a really sustainable, really meaningful recommendations and a path forward for all of our countries. And I think this is the only way where by including all of us, academics, experts, civil society activists, government, into the process of discussions, the way that we can make a true friendship, make this horizontal cooperation and a true cooperation between our countries. It is great to be back in India. I've been involved into BRICS and deliberations for the past 5 years at least. And it's good to see all the friends here from, not only from India. India is also important for Asian Forum on Global Governance, launched very successfully by the country, but also all the good friends that I see from Brazil, from China, from South Africa. And I believe that it's not only sustainable development goals that we are able to push forward by means of cooperation between our countries, but also issues of social justice, issues of global justice, that the voice of our countries is heard, is listened to, and that we know that we are among the rule makers for the benefit, for the good of the whole world, that it's not egoistic, not selfish, but it's with all the benefits to the global civil society and the global world. I also think that it's really great that Indian side has taken up issues of economics, of sustainable development. Probably if we could also look more into social issues that were also dealt with during the Russian presidency, like education, health. This is of vital importance for our countries because we cannot reach prosperity and cannot reach further development unless we deal directly with their burning issues of the kind. So once again, I'd like to thank you for taking this initiative further on, for organizing such a wonderful event, and I'm looking forward to the recommendations that come from those 2 days meeting, and I'm sure we'll be able to present some kind of breakthrough and in certain issues, and probably I do hope, and I'm turning directly to Mr. Amar Sinha, that I do hope that our official side, our chairperson, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, would be looking attentively into the recommendations that we are to work out, elaborate here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Panova, for your remarks. And I think you have very rightly said that we should be focusing on some of the key areas like education, like health. And I think in terms of the sustainable development goals that all of us have committed ourselves to, these are areas, in fact, which we have certain strengths in because of the experience that we have gained over the many years of economic development. But I think most important is that we are facing today a very different global environment. As you know, global GDP growth is slowing down. We have just received the figures for global trade, which is now growing at less than even GDP growth. So we see also the rise of protectionist sentiments. We see barriers coming up again. So globalization, the whole process of globalization itself is in some doubt. And yet, I strongly believe that in dealing with some of the challenges that we are facing and which you identified, there is really no alternative to global collaboration. I do not think that we can really deal with these issues on a national basis or even on just a regional basis. So this is something where civil society organizations perhaps have a greater role to play today than in the past in terms of helping us set new norms, making certain that the social dimension, much more importantly, the human dimension, is always upfront in the manner in which we do our policy making. So thank you very much for your remarks. I have now great pleasure in inviting Ambassador Hua to take the floor and share the Chinese perspective with us. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Professor. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege and pleasure to attend the second BRICS Civil Society Organization Forum. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate upon the successful convening of this forum and express my gratitude to our India host for the hospitality and thoughtful arrangement. Last month, the leaders of our BRICS countries met on the margins of the G20 summit in Hangzhou, China. The leaders recognized that the BRICS countries are confronted with new challenges in their respective economic growth. In this regard, they recognized that the economic growth prospects and momentum of our BRICS countries will continue to be a crucial engine for global economy growth. The leaders underlined the importance of further strengthening BRICS strategic partnership guided by principles of openness, solidarity, equality, mutual understanding, inclusiveness, and mutually beneficial cooperation. The meeting in Hangzhou gathered momentum for the upcoming leaders' meeting in Goa, as well as to our forum. The theme of our forum is towards exploring inclusive partnerships and collective solutions. In my opinion, the key word of our forum is partnership, which actually captures the spirit of cooperation among BRICS countries. First, it is a partnership of responsibility. The BRICS countries consist of 5 countries of different histories, traditions, religions, values, and development stages. And together, they represent 43% of the world population and almost 30% of global GDP. It has no peers in terms of diversity and representation. This is a privilege and also a responsibility. The world is facing great challenges: wars, conflicts, climate change, and terrorism are causing misery and death on a daily basis. Trade protectionism is on the rise. The world still has more than 800 million people in the dire poverty. In addition, the global governance system is far from democratic and is hindering the efforts of the international community to take collective actions. The leaders of the BRICS countries are aware of the challenges and the responsibilities. The BRICS countries stand for justice and greater democracy in international relations, call for full compliance with the purpose of the principles of the UN Charter and the basic norms of international relations, and push for the peaceful settlement for international disputes through political and diplomatic means. In the past years, BRICS countries have worked to promote world economical growth and try to enhance the role of the BRICS countries in the global governance system so that it can confront to the reality of the rising of the BRICS countries and developing countries as a whole. To that end, we should promote, reform the governance structure of a current international financial system and increase the representation of the emerging markets and developing countries. Second, it is a partnership of a mutual understanding. As I mentioned earlier, the BRICS countries consist of countries of different histories, traditions, religions, values, and development stage, but it does not dilute our cooperation. In fact, our cooperation has proven that the different social systems can accommodate each other. The different development models can work with each other, and the different values can draw on the strengths of each other. Just as Chinese President Xi Jinping pointed out, the BRICS countries are just like the 5 fingers, each having its own strengths, and together forming a clenched fist. Diversity is a striking feature and advantage of the BRICS. We, as civil society members, should actively conducting dialogues and sharing our practice, encouraging intercultural and interreligious dialogues, sharing the experience in our development, especially in our efforts to realize the Sustainable Development Goals and make progress together. Only in this way can we enhance our solidarity and cooperation and boost our representation and influence in the changing world. Third, it is a partnership for development. The BRICS countries are confronting with multi difficulties and challenges in their economy, but we are blessed with abundant natural resources, vast domestic markets, huge development potential, and ample policy space. If we adopt coherent policies in accordance with our national conditions, the rise of the BRICS is inevitable. The G20 Hon'ble Summit meeting has, for the first time, put development at the center of the global micro-policy framework. In the years to come, BRICS countries should make efforts to promote robust, sustainable, balanced, and inclusive economic growth, and set out a path of sustainable development with economical prosperity, social progress, and a beautiful environment. I believe that a closer partnership and a joint action by BRICS members will force the driving forces for and intensify cooperation on global economical growth, contributing to shared prosperity and the better well-being of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, in the less than 2 weeks, the leaders will meet in Goa and will discuss issues that need to be addressed by the BRICS countries. We are looking forward to positive achievements from the meeting. I believe our Indian host in working with other BRICS members countries will make the meeting a success. In the following 2 days, we are going to discuss political, economical, and social issues faced by the world and try to make contribution to the leaders' meeting. This is a daunting task, but also we work in the spirit of cooperation. We will definitely fulfill our duty. Thanks for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador CF, for those very important remarks. I think you did very well to draw attention to the defining characteristic of the BRICS country, which is, in fact, their diversity. And pointing out that diversity, in fact, is not a constraint on partnership. In fact, one could say that the variety of our development experience creates, in fact, opportunities for much more productive and creative partnership. And we certainly look forward to working together with you, because the Chinese development experience is one of the most successful in recent history. And it has many lessons for other developing countries. So we very much look forward to having a very productive dialogue with China with respect to our development prospects. I now have great pleasure in giving the floor to Reverend Malcolm Damon. You have the floor, sir, and we would be happy to hear your perspective.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you also Dr. Tharoor and Mr. Sinha, as well as Professor Chaturvedi and Shenoy and fellow panelists for this opportunity to engage with you on these issues and the invitation to be with you today. As has already been said, the issues that are before us over these 2 days are important. India, in the chairmanship of the BRICS, has indicated that the building of responsive, inclusive, and collective solutions is, for them, the theme for this BRICS over the year. Inclusion and inclusiveness is important, and in order to build inclusive communities and also an inclusive forum as the BRICS, it's important that we are reminded about the issues that make us less inclusive, and that is the challenges around inequality and poverty. As has been said around the Sustainable Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals also address the issue of inequality. Ourselves, as the Economic Justice Network within South Africa, has formed a network, the South African Network on Inequality, in order to address these issues, because we believe that the issues of inequality is rising and is of great concern to countries of the BRICS. Looking at the program, there is a strong focus on issues that concerns all of us. And those are issues of food security, of youth employment, human security, peace and justice. These are all important and needs to be discussed between all of us. There is the issue that was also addressed last year at the UFA Declaration, and is within the UFA Declaration, and I think also from the side of civil society, especially also from South Africa, but I'm sure to all of us, is also the issues around tax and tax justice. These are mentioned in the UFA Declaration around transfer pricing, tax administration, and the importance of these issues within the BRICS, but also for the Global South. There is another important issue that's addressed within our program, and also will be addressed tomorrow. And that's the need for a broader framework to institutionalize the BRICS. The session on institutionalizing mechanisms for civil society engagement is important and needs to be addressed. This is also an issue I addressed last year at in Russia, in Moscow, when I said about the importance of the institutionalizing of this particular forum, so that we'll have a broader framework to provide an institutionalizing of the civil society BRICS forum. So a further point is the importance of engaging on these issues through interlinkages. It was interesting to hear all the activities that took place, but also the importance of a focus on youth, and the importance also in this meeting that will be in one of the parallel sessions of youth employment. And we need to, there's also the youth summit that took place. So we need to create linkages between the different forums, the different actors, the different stakeholders, in order to come up with more joint solutions and inclusive frameworks to address the issues of mutual concern. So as we discuss these things over the next 2 days, I call on all of us to engage in openness and with mutual respect, and I'm grateful for the opportunity for our Indian hosts to give us the opportunity to address these issues so that we can also take that forward to the summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Malcolm Durman, for your remarks. Now, may I call upon Ambassador Vishwanathan, who's a distinguished fellow in the Observer Research Foundation and one of our partner organizations, to kindly take the floor and share his perspectives with us. Ambassador Vishwanathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, Shri Amar Sinha, Chairman of RIS, Ambassador Shyam Saran, DG RIS, Mr. Sachin Chaturvedi, Chairperson of FIDC, Professor Anuradha Chinoy, speakers on the stage, distinguished participants from all the BRICS countries, ladies and gentlemen, friends. It gives me great pleasure and it's a privilege for me to participate in this very important initiative. I thank MEA, FIDC and RIC for inviting me to be a part of this great event. ORF had the privilege of participating in the first BRICS Civil Forum in Moscow, which was organized by Victoria, who is here. She was the main force behind that. And I'm glad to see that the Civil BRICS Forum is becoming a permanent track to activities for BRICS, along with other activities. The timing of this meeting is also very significant. Just 2 weeks ago, we had the BRICS Academic Forum in Goa, where more than 50 academics from all the 5 BRICS countries discussed a whole range of issues of critical importance to BRICS, and the recommendations were sent to the ministry for, as an input for the summit. In the next 2 days here, we will be discussing most of the issues again, but through the prism of civil societies. And we will have new perspectives on the issues, which will also act as an input to the ministry for the forthcoming summit. Now, why are civil society perspectives important? They are important because civil societies occupy that critical and very important space between government on one side and business on the other. Even with the best of intentions, governments all over the world are finding it difficult to deal with increasing complexity of problems by themselves. Also, governments are most efficient at a certain bandwidth of scale. Above that scale and below that scale, governments need other agencies to deliver. That is why it's often said that governments are too big to do small things and too small to do big things. That is where the governments try to leverage the civil societies to help them in delivering the goods and services to the people. All efficient governments are nowadays dependent on civil societies, that is, people like you and organizations like you. On the other end of the spectrum is the private sector. Today, it's a reality that private sector contributes a huge amount to growth and employment. And one is not too critical of the private sector. But the fact remains that the main objective of the private sector is profits and the satisfaction of the shareholders. We cannot escape from that fact. Even though one is not too critical of the private sector, as somebody remarked in a lighter vein, that even for the most honest businessmen, in the best of circumstances, it is a constant struggle between the invoice and the inner voice. And in most of the cases, the former trumps the latter. So the role of the civil society vis-a-vis the private sector is to strengthen that inner voice, and how you can cooperate with the private sector in getting the maximum benefit for the society as a whole. Here, one message has to go across, and the civil society is best placed to do that. That is, pure market forces and technologies by themselves cannot solve all human problems. That is where civil societies have a great role to play. And why are civil societies suitably placed for this? There are 4 reasons, and I'll stop there. The first is their ability to reach out to excluded communities who fall outside the gambit of large-scale programs. The second is their specialized technical and social expertise and a deep understanding of the local context. The third is the ability to view issues from a wider lens without the constraints of fixed mandates. And the fourth and the most important thing is their continuous engagement with the communities. We have here an excellent assembly of leading civil societies from all the 5 BRICS countries. I have no doubt that the deliberations will be intense and productive. I am looking forward to the discussions over the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Vishwanathan. And as you said, we look forward in the next 2 days to see the inner voice that you mentioned be articulated very loud and clear in terms of very important messages to the BRICS summit that is to take place later this month. Thank you very much for your remarks. We now have Ambassador Amar Sinha, who's Secretary Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you very much, Amar, for being here this morning. And the Secretary Economic Relations, of course, is the key person with respect to taking the BRICS summit forward. He is very closely involved with all the preparations for the summit. So I think it is particularly, important for us to be able to use him as, in fact, our messenger to the summit. I think he has heard many important perspectives being put forward this morning. And now it is time for us to hear his perspective on how the civil society forum can actually be a contributor to the forthcoming summit. Amar, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Excellencies, representatives from the BRICS countries, Honorable Shashi, Tharoor Sahab, and I'm very fond of this new phrase that I've learned in Africa, all protocols observed, which takes care of a lot of this salutation. Let me start by saying that I'm very happy to be here with all of you. And it's very gratifying to see such a large gathering and representatives from various BRICS countries. Your deliberation, we hope, will enrich our knowledge, and of course, we look forward to your recommendations. I guess I would be stating the obvious if I said that since the inception of BRICS, it has made significant progress in terms of its of its global recognition as a forum for new ideas, as a forum of influential countries, which is shaping the global narrative. And the position that BRICS takes, which also depends on what feedback we get from all of you, actually is feeding into the G20 structures and various other international fora where we all participate as individual countries and collectively as BRICS. Starting its journey with focus on economic and financial issues, we have traveled a long distance. Now BRICS is increasingly looking at issues of strategic global issues, social issues, issues of humanitarian assistance, etc. And thus the role that civil society plays actually is completely in line with how Government of India looks at BRICS evolving in the future. And that is why we are very, very happy that we have been able to carry forward the great initiative that Russia took last year and bring together the BRICS civil societies from all the BRICS countries. Let me tell you that India is focused on institution building within BRICS. Perhaps the New Development Bank and the Contingency Reserve Arrangement were the most concrete examples, but these were in the economic field. We would be actually having a report at the next BRICS Summit, which is only 12 days from today, a report from the chairman of NDB on how it has fared in the year one and what it plans to do in subsequent years. But the question that the civil society also needs to think, that while we have created a lending arm, do you think in future, as the profile or economic performance of BRICS improves, the profile rises, obviously it leads to rising expectations from BRICS countries, do you think that there would be, in future, a need for an assistance arm of the BRICS? That is something that the civil societies can think and deliberate upon. Besides the institution building, as I mentioned, we are also looking at what are the new areas we can collaborate in. The few things that we have suggested, put on the table are, of course, a thinking wing for the NDB, like the World Bank Institute. It's called the New Development Bank Institute, which could do the economic analysis for the bank. Then we have also suggested a credit rating agency for BRICS for rating the projects that NDB would do. We have suggested agricultural research network, which is of key importance for all of us. Similarly, we are looking at railway research network, whether we can use the collective experience and expertise in this area of mass transportation, which will remain key for most of the BRICS countries, which have huge continental sizes. But more importantly, the way we have looked at the academic forum, the think tank of BRICS, and the civil society, is that we think, as Ambassador Vishwanathan said, that governments are too big to do small things. Governments at times are also straitjacketed in terms of inability to think of new ideas. So we look at you as our eyes to the future, in terms of which could come up churning of ideas, throw some light on what BRICS could actually focus on in the future for the collective good, both within the BRICS and, more importantly, what we can do with the other emerging nations of the world. And that is a key expectation that the countries around the globe have. In this context, when we meet in Goa on 15th, 16th of October, you'll be happy to know that we have invited all our neighboring countries, which forms part of the BIMSTEC, which is the Bay of Bengal initiative, which includes Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Thailand, Sri Lanka, to be partners, to exchange views with the BRICS countries, and also present a perspective. What is it that they expect from BRICS countries as small emerging neighbors, as countries which hope to benefit from this grouping that we have created as BRICS. In fact, I have such a long list of things, but you have listened to so many ideas, and there are so many ideas that you have generated that it is difficult for me to sort of add to the information burden that you already have. But let me tell you that the civil society, one of the key objectives that we have looked is to take BRICS out of the capital cities, out of the foreign ministries, out of the chancelleries, and make it a people's movement. And that, if you will notice the way we have spread the BRICS events geographically within India, we have taken them to over 20 provinces in the country. We have focused on events which have had mass participation, like the Youth Forum, like the BRICS Film Festival. We are actually kicking off in 2 days' time under-17 BRICS football tournament. Similarly, the civil society. So we really want this people connect. We focused on tourism. We brought together people. The first time ever, the women parliamentarians from BRICS countries gathered together. So the key is the BRICS, if it has to become more than an idea, it has to become the people-centric movement where there is a great connect among the people. And there could be no better forum than the civil societies, and with your great network, connecting us back to the roots and to the grassroots. So I wish all of you success, and we look forward to your recommendations, which we can assure you that while, of course, most of the ideas will have to be phased out, because as you know, that this year we have had, 105 meetings already. Obviously, some of these are testing new ideas, new grounds. And if we have to move forward, we will have to look at what works, what doesn't work, where we find common ground and move forward. But we'll be very happy to take on board the suggestions that you come up with, which I am sure would be people-centric. So I'll stop at that and just wish all of you tremendous deliberations, very good and open discussions, and some concrete suggestions which we can take forward. And I'll give the floor to our MP, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, for the inaugural remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amar. Before I give the floor to our chief guest, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, let me also mention to you that this particular event has been made possible through cooperation with a very large number of organizations. And I would like to, from the floor, I would really express my appreciation to all of them for joining us together in making this a success. And I would in particular like to mention the name of Mr. Rajesh Tandon, who is President of Participatory Research Asia, and he's also a member of the FIDC. He will, of course, be speaking in one of the sessions, but I particularly wanted to recognize him as one of our partners. And Dr. Ashok Khosla, who's the chairman of Development Alternatives, a very highly respected NGO and civil society organization here in India. They have really worked together with us to make this possible. And as Amar said, that our perspective is that BRICS, to be successful, should become a people's movement, should be an incubator of ideas. So if you look at the agenda that we have for the next 2 days, actually it is extraordinary, the kind of range of subjects that we are going to be covering. And I would also like to extend a special welcome to a large number of young students who are attending the session, because this is also very much part and parcel of our making this into a people's movement, exposing all sections of our society to what BRICS is all about. So I would like to just thank all of you for being present here this morning. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite our chief guest, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, Member of Parliament and Chairman of the External Affairs Committee of Parliament, to give his inaugural address. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairman, Ambassador Shyam Saran, Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, Amar Sinha, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Director General of the Research and Information System on Developing Countries, Professor Anuradha Chinoy, Professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Ms. Alice de Moraes Amorim Vogas, Climate Change and Development Associate from Brazil, Dr. Victoria Panova, Director of the Institute from Russia, Ambassador Xi Bohua from China, Reverend Malcolm Damon from South Africa, and Ambassador H. Vishwanathan from India, distinguished delegates, civil society members and activists, friends. I hope that covers everybody. It really is good to be with you all today. I think as an opposition member of parliament, I'm more a member of civil society anyway myself. So I'm delighted to be invited to inaugurate this event. As it happens, in the last month, I've had the pleasure of addressing two other BRICS-related events. And to me, this third gathering, following in such quick succession and with such enthusiastic and large participation, is a testament to how much potential and energy there is in this bloc and its future course. There was a time not too long ago when BRICS was jokingly dismissed by some as the only world body invented by a merchant bank, because the term BRIC, as you know, was coined by Jim O'Neill, then chief economist at Goldman Sachs, more than a decade ago, referring to Brazil, Russia, India, and China. But one person took the joke seriously. It was Russian President Vladimir Putin, and full points to him for this, who suggested in 2006 that the four countries should meet regularly. The grouping was soon formalized, and no one has looked back since. South Africa joined in 2011, solidifying the BRICS presence across the global south, with only Russia in the north. Today, the 5 member states are taken increasingly seriously as a significant force in global affairs, while a host of other countries are scrambling for membership. Of course, I would make the acronym completely unpronounceable, so perhaps no expansion would be recommended, but that's another matter. And of course, there is greater encouragement, including through civil society deliberations within the BRICS nations, that this gathering represents. Now, there's no doubt that we have a great opportunity at hand today with the BRICS, and the question is only whether we are able to embrace this shared future firmly and in all its fullness. To begin with, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, we are simply too big to be ignored. I liked Ambassador Vishwanathan talking about governments being too big to do small things. BRICS is certainly on the big side. The 5 countries in the BRICS formation together account for 43% of the world's population, 46% of the global labor force, 30% of the Earth's landmass, and 25% of the world's share of global gross domestic product, or GDP. So with that kind of clout, it's no wonder that the BRICS nations have started to propose and act upon new endeavors and common positions on international issues. BRICS is slowly emerging as an alternative forum that can stand up to the dominant worldview of established economies, the principal ones of whom merely happen to dominate because they were the founders of the post-Second World War global order. The BRICS nations might not have mattered in 1945, but today is 2016, and today to ignore the BRICS is to ignore the turn of history. Last year, in fact, as Dr. Panova was talking about the initiative taken by Russia, I was part of the first Parliamentary forum in Moscow of the BRICS countries, and I found myself in intense conversation with my Chinese counterpart, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Chinese National People's Congress, while South African and Brazilian parliamentarians were swaying to Russian music before everyone went out on a cruise on the River Moscow. Now, before the meeting, many had wondered whether the 5 parliaments could possibly find common ground. What on earth could India's fractious and rumbustious Lok Sabha, to which I belong, with its impassioned debates and disruptions, have in common with China's decorous NPC, which is, of course, a rigorously controlled echo chamber for Communist Party decisions? Membership in the new BRICS grouping, many believed, did not provide a strong enough basis for cooperation. We have very little common ground to build on, our critics argued, and certainly in much of the Western media, this was the message coming out. But I can tell you from personal experience last year that we all got along very well indeed in Moscow, and that if politicians from the 5 countries could engage constructively with each other, then regular dialogue with civil society groups should be a breeze. It should be a very promising and successful project. But what is it that draws us closer together? Alistair Morais suggested pluralism. I like the sound of that. Certainly we in India are very proud of our pluralism. I would be curious if the other 4 countries concurred, which would be a welcome approach, though the defense or the degree of pluralism in each country varies enormously amongst us, I fear. Victoria Panova spoke of global justice as being something that brings us all together. I would agree with that because I think all the major, let me put it this way, the BRICS countries have one major attribute in common, which is our exclusion from the places we believe we deserve in the current world order. After all, in the global system today, you're either at the table or on the menu. And being denied legitimate positions on the global stage by today's dominant powers is indeed a very strong glue that will hold this grouping together. The BRICS countries have long been rule takers in the international system. Now we are ready to join the rule makers. That may not seem to some like enough of a basis for a credible new international system. But with our economies on course to overtake those of the G7, before 2050, the BRICS economies will collectively exceed the GDP of the original G7. Let's not forget that. So the international system, the existing system, must make room for us or collapse. Where, for instance, we're not given our due at the Bretton Woods institutions, we can now consider very realistically the option of bypassing the World Bank or the IMF and planting the seeds of a new order. BRICS in its original embodiment was identified as those nations whose rapidly growing economies were challenging the preponderance of the G7. Indeed, in the last 15 years already, Brazil, Russia, and India have caught up with the smallest G7 economy, Italy, in nominal GDP terms, not PPP, but nominal, while China has overtaken Japan to become the second largest economy in the world, also in nominal terms. And together, the nominal GDP of BRICS countries is actually equivalent today to that of the European Union or that of the United States. And as I said, estimates are that they will overtake them in the not-so-distant future. Yet we know that until very recently, China's voting power in the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund was the same as Belgium's, an absurdity that took too long to rectify. This year, at last, the IMF quota reforms have begun to come into effect, increasing the quotas and voting powers of countries like China, India, Brazil, and Russia, placing them in the list of the top 10 members of the IMF. And so in modifying these outdated rules that guarantee disproportionate power to the oligarchic conglomerates that our global institutions have become, the BRICS have actually achieved a rare success. In all other cases, existing economic powers resist ceding control, and global governance largely remains in the hands of a few in a club that refuses to open its doors to new entrants, and is indeed reluctant to open its windows to a breath of fresh air from elsewhere on the planet. No wonder that the BRICS enterprise has deepened so continuously. The very fact that we are discussing civil society engagement here today and tomorrow is a testament to this. In addition to the annual BRICS summits, and sometimes even at the margins of the G20, which have produced joint declarations covering every major global issue, from questions of peace and security to United Nations reform, the foreign ministers, finance ministers, and central bank governors of the BRICS are meeting regularly in exclusive conferences and on the sidelines of other world forums. The high representatives of national security of each country have also met with each other annually since 2009. And let's not forget the track 2 dialogues between our think tanks, which I was able to address quite recently. And of course, we now have the 8th BRICS Summit looming in Goa later this month. All of you, I think, know that the summit is seeking to focus on 5 key pillars, which have been listed as institution building, implementation, integration, innovation, and continuity. I would have probably replaced continuity with inclusivity, not merely to maintain the rhythm of alliteration, so they all begin with I, but also to stress the fact that equitable growth amongst the BRICS countries does leave something to be desired. Between 1995 and 2005, the growth of income in China, India, Russia, and South Africa was concentrated in the hands of the top 20% of their respective countries, and they're the top 20% of the households of their respective countries. In the same period, there were also shortfalls in essential services such as health and education for the poor. Now, I know that in civil society consultations, this will be one of the major concerns that needs to be addressed, and I hope you will take it up with great seriousness. One particularly significant role that civil society can play is, of course, in influencing the agenda for the BRICS summits and consultations. If these civil society forums across the BRICS are talking to each other and also talking simultaneously to their governments, greater unity in terms of common goals, whether in addressing issues of inequality, access to health and education, climate change, urbanization, the reduction of poverty, can be found. And these issues will find a place at the high table of multilateral talks when the BRICS leaders convene. Civil society can not only inform the discussions that BRICS leaders will undertake, but also play a role in working to the best possible solutions. The age of conducting international relations behind closed wood-paneled doors is pretty much over. We live in a networked world, and building a network and allegiances across the board and across civil society is clearly key to the future of international relations. If this is how civil society can influence leaders, the traditional role of civil society itself as an intermediary between state and individual is also expanding. In the age of multilateralism, civil society goes beyond borders, and you all can act as intermediaries between the multilateral system and ordinary individuals in your own societies. Initiatives such as this one, for which we have all gathered here this morning, bring the issues from the realm of the cabinet room debate to that of intensive everyday discussions. We all have a stake in our future, and the network that embraces nations and organizations has at its core individuals and citizens of an increasingly globalized, connected, networked world. But the future of BRICS will be determined by the institutions it creates. It is the first time that a group of 5 emerging economies with varying political systems and structures, and which are geographically spread wide apart from each other, have taken up the mantle of development together. The new development bank, emulating the BRICS values of inclusive and equal development, has been established with exactly the same amount of capital contributed by each country. Consequently, each member enjoys 20% of the voting rights, unlike the disproportionate influences we see at play in the World Bank, for instance, or the IMF. The next steps must look to take this momentum forward through the creation of a knowledge hub as well, which supports the New Development Bank in the form of the New Development Bank Institute. The potential is unquestionable, but the extent of its success remains to be seen. With China also fronting the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, add to which the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, the IMF, we may find the NDB becoming another cook in an overflowing kitchen, spoiling or at any rate oversalting the broth. In Asia, certainly, we know there's no dearth of lending institutions and no dearth of countries willing to stick out their hands for it. But as the former American President Herbert Hoover once said, "Blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt." And India, amongst the BRICS, has the youngest population, so all of you should be particularly concerned. Now, while we look to reform institutions already established, BRICS will have a significant role to play in creating the institutions of tomorrow, in areas where the old guard must share a less unequal playing field. The governance of new spaces and commons, such as outer space and its weaponization, the deep ocean, polar ice caps, the internet, these things cannot simply be managed on the old norms. Add to this the growing financial and technological capabilities of the BRICS, and we could be leading architects in building these institutions and determine the writing of new and fairer rules in these areas. I've often said that India can and should play a role because it's equipped with technology, human resources, and skills in everything from cyberspace to outer space. And I think the same applies to the other BRICS countries. Civil society must, of course, not only help put this message across, but help write these rules, help the government shape these rules through your points of view as civil society members. Equally important, however, is the role that civil society organizations must play in resolving those contentious issues that could sour the BRICS project. Of these, discriminatory trade distortions, geopolitical disagreements, and cyberspace regulations are perhaps the greatest. This is, of course, due to the different development models in the 5 countries. One could argue that to some degree Russia is the odd man out. China has largely eliminated mass poverty at the expense of civil liberties and democracy, while the other 3 are still struggling with existential questions of survival for a significant proportion of their populations. Can the BRICS truly adopt a common view on global macroeconomics, development aid, and international resource transfers? Can our needs be synchronized into a policy or worldview that all 5 members can agree upon? Civil society engagement could help pave the way and build up knowledge, tap into resources across the board, find the innovative solutions that sometimes evade the bureaucrats and diplomats who have to be straitjacketed by other considerations. After all, those in government have been shaped by the world of the past in which our today is anchored. Civil society organizations have a flexibility that can be exercised to build the world of tomorrow. Where bureaucrats and diplomats fail, civil society can help build up justification for innovation, support for new thoughts and ways of doing things, and help us all move forward. So for now, the BRICS remain an institution with great potential, surrounded still by considerable uncertainty. After all, it gets frustrating when one is labeled promising and then gets nowhere after initial fanfare. And what's true for individuals is also true for institutions. The BRICS' future impact in the world will, in a large part, however, be influenced by those who weren't in Moscow last year or at UFA or here this year, the Western countries who dominate the existing post-1945 international system. To the extent that they raise the ramparts and resist the claims of BRICS members to places of honor on the world stage, places our countries deserve, the greater will be the incentive for the BRICS countries to consolidate their own alternative system and view of the world. The glue born out of a shared sense of marginalization is, as I said, a potent force, but it does raise fundamental questions for the future of the international system. Of course, it doesn't have to be this way. BRICS should ideally find their place within a framework of global structures that ensure all countries a fair deal in keeping with their size, capabilities, and contributions to the international system. BRICS, in the sense of BRICS, can be used to build an equitable world order. They can also be thrown to shatter the glass towers of the existing system. The same can be said of BRICS in the BRICS sense. But the journey we have started has the potential to create something great for the citizens of the 21st century. And civil society obviously has an indispensable part to play in creating and shaping this new world order. Thank you very much, and I wish you very successful consultations in the next couple of days. I declare the BRICS Civil Forum inaugurated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tharoor, for, as expected, a very, very thought-provoking address, inaugural address. We thank you for sharing your very important perspectives for us. I think, as you reminded us, it is time that the BRICS took themselves off the menu, as it were. But I hope the BRICS will not then proceed to make some other countries put on the menu instead. We certainly would like to see that BRICS does initiate a different kind of a international order where, in fact, all can be invited to a hearty meal altogether. So that is the spirit of inclusiveness that we hope that BRICS would be able to generate. So once again, thank you very much, all of you, for being here at this inaugural session. A very, I think, very rich debate awaits us later today and tomorrow. And I'm sure that we will have many important innovative ideas which will emerge for our future work, particularly for the BRICS summit. Let me also thank all the members, distinguished members of the panel who have spoken this morning and set the ball rolling, as it were, for our discussions later. I would like to now invite all of you to join us for tea. But in the meantime, I would request our chief guest, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, to join other members of the panel to come and inaugurate the small exhibition that we have on the lawns of Habitat. So once again, thank you, and this inaugural session is closed. Thank you.